afternoon. I'm Abigail Knott. Welcome to Walk by Faith. And I have been so busy studying for this video. And so this is part 2 of my in-depth dive study into the prophets of the Bible. And so please, before I go on, like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and share. Asseblief. Okay, so we're diving right into it. We've got a lot to get through. There is just so much here that we need to think about when we read the prophets, and that we need to understand in context to what it meant back then for the people to go through what they went through because of disobedience, but also for what it means for now, for these days, and for the days to come. And if you want to understand end times, what we're going through now, you have to study the prophets. It is essential. So at the times that Isaiah began to be used by God, to prophesy to the Israelites, the northern and southern kingdoms were declining politically and spiritually. And God revealed through Isaiah that judgment was coming. The northern kingdom specifically was very evil. It had gone completely off the rails. There were no good kings, whereas the southern part of the kingdom, they had some good kings and some evil kings, but in the northern kingdom there were no good kings. And part of God's judgment was that under the Assyrian king Tilgat-Pilneser III, 745 to 727 BCE, the Assyrians had started to invade Israel in the northern part of the kingdom. The Assyrians captured the northern part of the kingdom in 272. I said that last time too. 722 BCE, which made Judah even more vulnerable to attack. Obviously, because their brothers and sisters were in the northern kingdom were defeated. So in Isaiah 10 verse 5 to 34 it says, "O Asher, the rod expressing my anger, the club in their hands is my fury. I am sending him against a hypocritical nation, ordering him to march against a people who enrage me, to take the spoil and the plunder, and trample them down like mud in the street." That is not what Asher intends. That is not what they think. Rather, they mean to destroy, to cut down nation after nation. For their kings say, "Aren't all my commanders kings? Hasn't Calno suffered like Carchemish?" These names. Hamath and like Arpad. Shomron like Damasek. Damasek is Damascus. Just as my hand reached the kingdoms of non-gods with more images than in Jerusalem and Shomron, so won't I do to Jerusalem and her non-gods what I did to Shomron and her idols. Therefore, when Adonai has done everything he intends to do to Mount Zion and Jerusalem, I will punish the king of Asher for the boasting that comes from his proud heart and from reveling in his arrogant looks. So he says, I am bringing these people to Jerusalem and Mount Zion to conquer them, but when the king of Asher, and this is what they did, and what some of them still do, when the king of Asher boasts, and they did boast, and the things they used to do was completely humiliate their captives. and he would have boasted, and he would have laughed at them, and he would have humiliated them. Um, it says that they were taken naked in chains to where they came from. Um, so it says, I will punish the king of Asher for boasting that comes from his proud heart and from the reveling in his arrogant looks. Okay, so after he says that he takes the people, Adonai will punish him. God will punish him for his pride of his heart and his arrogance. For he says, with my own strong arm I have done this, and with my wisdom, because I'm so clever. I erased the boundaries between peoples. I plundered their stores for the future. As a mighty man, I subjugated the inhabitants. My hand found the riches of the people like a nest. And as one gathers abandoned eggs, I gathered the whole earth. Not one wing fluttered, not one beak opened or let out a chirp. Should the axe glorify itself over the one who chops with it? Should the saw magnify itself over the one who moves it? It's as if a stick would wave the hand that raises it up, or as if a wooden staff would lift a person who is not made of wood. Now that is talking about, that's God saying, chill out, dude. You were just a tool in my hands. Discipline my people. You are the axe and you're glorifying yourself. I'm the one who chops, but you are the axe and you're glorifying yourself. But it was me. It was me who allowed you to do this because I needed to discipline my people. So therefore the Lord, Adonai Tsevaot, will send leanness to his well-fed ones, and in place of his glory, a fire will be kindled and will burn and burn. The light of Israel will become a fire, and his Holy One a flame, burning and devouring his thorns and briars in a single day. The glory of his forest and of his fertile land he will consume body and soul like an invalid wasting away. So few forest trees will remain that a child could list them. On that day, the remnant of Israel, those who of the house of Jacob who escaped, will no longer rely on the man who struck them down, but will truly rely on Adonai and the Holy One of Israel. A remnant will return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty God. For although your people Israel are like sand of the sea, only a remnant of them will return. Destruction is decreed, overflowing with justice. Adonai Elohim Sebaot will bring about this decreed destruction throughout all the land. Therefore Adonai Elohim Sebaot says, my people living in Zion, don't be afraid of Asher even when he strikes you with a stick and raises his staff against you the way it was in Egypt. For in but a little while my fury will end, and my anger will have destroyed them. Adonai Tsevaot will wield a whip against them, as he did when striking Midian at the rock of Oreb. As his staff was over the sea, he will raise it, the way it was in Egypt. He's referring to Moses when he struck the rock and water came out, and he's referring to Moses holding the staff over the sea and the sea opening up for the Israelites. So on that day, his burden will fall from your shoulders and his yoke from your neck. The yoke will be destroyed by your prosperity. He has come to Ayat and passed through Migron. He has stored his equipment at Michmas. They have crossed the pass, then lodged at Jiva. Ramah is shaking. Givat Shaul has fled. Cry, shriek, Bat Galim. Listen, Laish. Poor Anatot. Madmenah is in flight. The people of Gevon take cover. This very day he will stop at Nov, and he will shake his fist at the mountain of the daughter of Zion. at the hill of Jerusalem. See how Adonai Elohim Sebaot lops off the branches with terrible violence. The ones standing highest are chopped down, the lofty are laid low, and he will hack down the forest underbrush with an axe, and the I think it's a Levant, in his splendor falls. Something struck me here from our studies. The ones, see how Adonai Elohim Sebaot lops off the branches with terrible violence. The violence of the armies coming against them it was violent. The ones standing on the highest are chopped down first. When they took the people into exile, they took the politicians, the nobles, the royalty, the craftsmen of that place, and they took them into exile, and they would leave a small remnant of people, of poor people behind, that would actually work the fields and the vineyards. And they took the most important people, the most useful to them, and they took them, and they would have to work in the land that they were being exiled to. They would have to work there. They would have to work the land, and they would have to, and some of them, the most intellectual of them, was actually taken to be educated, highly educated, and would serve actually the royalty there, would serve as leaders there. But most of the people had to do really, really menial work when they went into exile. So I see already some connections between like what is in here and what I've been studying and what has been repeating itself over and over. It says, "O Asher, the rod of my expressing anger." Regarding this verse, that's verse 5, right? So let's read it again. "O Asher, the rod expressing my anger, the club in their hands is my fury." So it's regarding this verse. Rashi writes that God made Asher, Assyria. Rashi is a Hebrew writer. He reads that the God made Asher, Assyria, to chasten his people in turn. Following these events, Adonai will also bring judgment on Asher after he has used them to bring judgment on Israel, sending a wasting disease among Asher's warriors. This happened after the northern kingdom was taken captive and Asher threatened the southern kingdom. The angel of the Lord killed 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. Asher was eventually conquered by Babylon. Don't know what this is on my screen again. Okay, so Asher was, I've lost my place. Okay, Asher was eventually conquered by Babylon in 609 BCE. Here, Isaiah expands on the theme he already introduced, the coming Messiah who would establish a future time of blessing all through the Davidic line, would be judged. A remnant of the nation will return after the time of captivity. Many were taken into captivity, but only a remnant will actually return. And that's actually similar to October 7th, when Hamas attacked Israel. It's the same thing. They took them away into captivity, and only a remnant have actually returned. So it's amazing how the past is actually quite similar to our present. Okay, so the capture of Israel meant what? It meant deportation of many Israelites. So this is why I'm spelling this out to you, so you can understand that these were real people with real situations here. They were in serious situations. They were in danger every day. They were stressed out and anxious. This is real. It's not just a Bible story that you read in your Bible and you say, oh, that's nice. And then you close it and you have a peaceful sleep because you don't think about it. But this is what happened. The capture of Israel meant deportation of many Israelites throughout the rest of the Assyrian kingdom. This window keeps on popping up. Okay. So the Assyrians resettled in the areas of the northern kingdom that they had conquered, along with the captives from other conquered lands, leading to the Samaritan people. Now, so the Samaritans are descended from the Israelites, and they are descended from the people that the Babylonians, or actually that the Assyrians brought in. And then this is the reason that Jews did not trust Samaritans, because they had other blood, and there was a fear, obviously, of what would happen, what they would do to them. So this time was a time of great suffering, but God always says through Isaiah that he will save them out of captivity. That's something that now that I'm really studying it for a while, over and over there's this, I will judge you. You will be judged, but your enemies will be judged for their reaction, for the way they treated you. But also in the future, I'm giving you hope. There's restoration coming. I am bringing the Messiah to you. So the Lord always brings hope. And he always says, at some point, my anger will be over and I'll bring you back. So he always says that. But it takes years and years and years. How many years was Daniel away in exile? I think wasn't it 70 years? It took 70 years for people actually to start coming back to the Holy Land. Okay, so it was a time of great suffering. But God always says through Isaiah that he will save them out of captivity, that he will not be angry forever. The Assyrian captivity was nothing but a tool for God to discipline the Israelites. The theme of forgiveness is starting to come through. Even when God is angry, he says, but I will forgive you, but I will get over my anger. And it's just reminding me sometimes when I'm angry, which it takes me a long time to get angry, but if I get angry, I'm like, just give me some time. My anger will end because I know myself. I'm very forgiving. My anger will end, but not now. I'm actually very upset with you. It's like the Lord gets angry, but it's righteous anger. It's always righteous anger. And then he has a time of punishment, that he disciplines his children, and then that time comes to an end. So the Assyrians used, now I'm talking about the different ways, the different tactics that they did to wage war on the Israelites. So the Assyrians used siege warfare, military tactics, and psychological warfare. The siege warfare, they used battering rams. We all know what battering rams are. If you watch the movies, they're these big, long wooden things, sometimes with like rams' heads on, and you go up to a castle or a fort or a stronghold or something, and you batter the gates with the ram so that the gates can open. And siege towers. I'm sure we've seen some of them in movies where they build mobile towers, and that enables them to attack from above, scaling the walls and overwhelming the Israelites. And then earthen ramps. I'm sure we've seen that in movies too, where they pile up some earth, and they actually take a long time. They must have been so patient, but they made like ramps made of earth making a path up to the top of the wall. And then they used sapping. Now, sapping is when they dig tunnels under the walls to weaken them. So they surround the city. The enemy surrounds the city to cut off supplies and reinforcements. That is a way of making people desperate. It's a way of waging warfare. So then military tactics. They have a well-disciplined army. They have combined arms, military, cavalry, chariots, archers in combination in combined operations, maximizing offensive potential. And they have iron weapons like, I don't know, axes, arrows, that kind of thing. And then they used psychological warfare. They used terror tactics. They were terrorists. They used terror tactics, impalement, decapitation, flaying, instilling fear. Sounds similar to some things that happen today. Deportation. They had deportation. They had public displays of cruelty, severed heads and bodies of enemies displayed as a warning. And so these are the tactics that they used. So the reason I go so deep with this, as I've said before, is because it's not just a story. By prophesying that the Assyrians would capture Israel, this is what it meant. Deportation, decapitation, and terror. After that, King Sennacherib of Ashur threatens Jerusalem with an invasion. Then the southern kingdom is threatened by Babylon. The curses of the Mosaic covenant will be visited upon the people in the form of exile. And now I'm going deep into exile because I want you to understand it's not just a story, it happened. So exile. If you are experiencing exile, it means you are a victim of a successful military operation, a successful military conquest. It means deportation. It meant home is the place of the past, and you're now living in a hostile land. Everyone is your enemy. The Babylonians used all the same tactics as the Assyrians, but they also gouged people's eyes out. But actually, the Assyrians probably did it too, but they gouged people's eyes out also. And it was all about humiliation, humiliating the captives. Exile was a way to disrupt any potential revolt in conquered territories. They go for the political leaders, the nobles, the soldiers, the religious leaders, craftsmen, and artisans. In Daniel, the first thing Nebuchadnezzar did was to round up young men of royal and noble blood. And Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they were in this group. They were some of the royal and the noble people. And you can actually see that in 2 Kings. It is here, there. 2 Kings 24, verse 14. Okay, 2 Kings 24, verse 14. He carried all Jerusalem away captive. All the princes, all the bravest soldiers, 10,000 captives, also all the craftsmen and metal workers. No one was left but the poorest people of the land. Okay, and then 1 Chronicles 6, verse 15. I think that's 1 Chronicles 6. Verse 15. It was 15, eh? Yes. 1 Chronicles 6, verse 15. The son of Shema, the son of Haggiah, the son of Asa. No, that's not 15. Hold on. And Yotzadak went into captivity when Adonai carried Judah and Jerusalem away at the hands of Nebuchadnezzar. I love how that's put because it says, when Adonai, God, carried Judah and Jerusalem away at the hands of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon, they were the tools. They were just tools. God did not like them. They were idolaters. They were terrorists. They were evil. But God can use even your enemies as tools. Okay. And then we've got Jeremiah 20 verse 6. Jeremiah. Okay. Going too far. I'm nearly there. Okay, Jeremiah 20 verse 6. And you, Pashkur, along with your entire household, will go into captivity. You will go to Babylon, where you will die and be buried, you and all your friends to whom you have prophesied lies. One of the 7 things that God hates are lies. Okay, and notice that it doesn't say liars, the people who lie. It says lies. He hates our choice to lie. He hates sin, not the sinner. Okay. Then there is 27 verse 20. Oh, right here. Turned right onto it here. That Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, did not cease when he carried off captive Yachanyahu and son of Joachim, king of Judah, Jehoiakim, that's Jehoiakim, king of Judah, from Jerusalem to Babylon, along with all the leading men of Judah and Jerusalem. Okay, so we've got a small amount of the poor families, as I said not long ago, a small amount of the poor families were left to tend the fields and the vineyards. Those who were deported had to work for the health and well-being of their new home, of the new nation, the new country they were taken to. So those who were deported had to work, for the well-being of their new home as leaders, artisans, and part of the general labor force, while a few were selected for advanced education and eventual leadership positions in the new country. That's Daniel 1:3-5. Daniel. I think that Daniel is this way. Amos, Jonah, Malachi. Proverbs, Job. Oh, here's Ruth. Esther, Daniel. Okay, Daniel 1. Right. 1 verse 3-5. The king ordered Ashpenaz, the eunuch, serving as chief officer, to bring into the palace from the people of Israel some of royal and or noble descent. They were to be boys without physical defect, handsome in appearance, versed in all kinds of wisdom, quick to learn, discerning, and having the capacity to serve in the king's palace, and he was to teach them the language and literature, literature of the Kasdim. The king assigned them a daily portion of his own food and the wine he drank, and they were to be cared for in this way for 3 years. At the end of this time, they were to become the king's attendants. So a small amount of the people actually didn't do too badly in the new country. They were actually given education, and they were actually given leadership roles, and they were able to serve in the palaces. So although most were forced to operate in very humiliating ways in that new country, so it was really a small amount of people. And for God, if you think about Daniel, God engineered it so that Daniel would be one of those people, because Daniel had an incredibly special relationship with the Lord, and God wanted him to be part of that. He wanted him to be one of the leaders in the new nation, because as we know the story, the king there used to get dreams, and no one could tell him what the dreams were for. And Daniel was called because he was an incredibly wise man. He prayed all the time to the Lord. And so there you see that Daniel was lucky. He was one of the lucky ones. Also, but if you consider the spiritual pressure that he was under, he refused to bow to the king. He said, "I only bow to God." There was and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, even they were trying to force them to bow to the statue that the king made of himself, and they wouldn't bow, and they got thrown in a furnace. Someone said, "Oh, Daniel got thrown in a furnace." No, Daniel got thrown in a lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, his friends, got thrown into the furnace, and then they saw there was a fourth person in there, and that they weren't burning, and the fourth person was actually, in the king's words, like the Son of God, Jesus. So anyway, just a bit of backstory there. To find out what exiled people faced, let's read Deuteronomy 28, verse 63 to 68. Okay, that's right there. Deuteronomy 28, verse 63 to 68. Well, thus it will come about that just as once Adonai took joy in seeking to do you good and increase your numbers, so now Adonai will take joy in causing you to perish and be destroyed. And you will be plucked off the land you are entering in order to take possession of it. Adonai will scatter you among all peoples from one end of the earth to the other. He definitely did that. And there you will serve other gods made of wood and stone, which neither you nor your ancestors have known. Among these nations you will not find repose, and there will be no rest for the sole of your foot. Rather, Adonai will give you their anguish of heart, dimness of eyes, and apathy of spirit. Your life will hang in doubt before you. You will be afraid night and day, and have no assurance that you will stay alive. In the morning you will say, "Oh, how I wish it were evening," and in the evening you will say, "Oh, how I wish it were morning," because of the fear overwhelming your heart and the sights that your eyes will see. Finally, Adonai will bring you back in ships to Egypt, the place of which I said to you, you will never see it again. And there you will try to sell yourselves as slaves to your enemies, and no one will buy you. Wow. The consequences of their sin. was incredible. And then Isaiah 20 verse 4. Zechariah, Hosea, Jeremiah, Isaiah. Oh, wait, not quite yet. Isaiah. Isaiah 20 verse 4. Let's see. So will the king of Asher lead away the captives of Egypt and the exiles of Ethiopia, young and old, unclothed and barefoot. Unclothed and barefoot. I've already mentioned that. They strip them naked, with their buttocks exposed to the shame of Egypt. I mean, this is what God said. Ezekiel 12, verse 18 to 19. Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Ezekiel 12, verse 18 to 19. Human being, shake as you eat your food, tremble anxiously as you drink your water, and say to the people of the land, here is what Adonai Elohim says concerning those living in Jerusalem, in the land of Israel. They will eat their bread in anxiety and drink their water in horror, because the land will be desolated from everything that fills it due to the violence of those living there. And I'm just going to read 20 also. The inhabited cities will be laid to waste, the land will be desolate, and you will know that I am Adonai. Okay, so what happened is, in my humble opinion, is that their love for God grew cold. They got lazy. They kowtowed to other peoples, and that idolatry were unjust in their own country. God doesn't like injustice. And God is not blind and dumb that he cannot see and hear what is going on in this world today. He is still the God that gets angry, righteously angry. And people might think that they are getting away with their evil now, but I'm telling you, there will come a day, and that day has started coming, where the Lord will say, enough. Now I'm angry. Now there are consequences for your sins, and you can look into the news and to everything that's going on around the world. People are being exposed. People's agendas are being exposed. God is exposing them, and they are paying. They are starting to pay for the evil that they've done for years. I mean, we are finding out the evil things that people did, like especially like leaders, that leaders have done like 20 years ago, and now it's coming out, and now they are starting to pay for what they have done. After being conquered, the Israelites endured deportation, being stripped naked, being marched in the direction of an unknown land, an uncertain future, no rest but days and nights filled with fear, anxiety, growing hopelessness. Normally, when the biblical authors wrote about exile, most of the time, majority, if not all the time, they were writing about thousands, tens of thousands of Israelites who experienced exile at the hands of the Assyrians and the Babylonians. There, God had promised that the Israelites would occupy and hold the land, in connection with the promise that Jesus, the Messiah, the Christ, he would come from that land. And now, lots of people struggle with that. They're like, well, why did this happen? Well, God literally prophesied it in Deuteronomy 28. But God said, that they would hold and occupy the land. So, and now God was using the Assyrians and the Babylonians to remove them from their land. So people have struggled with this, including Habakkuk. Habakkuk 1, verse 12 to 17. I'm just interesting. These are prophets that I have read very little of. Habakkuk 1, verse 12 to 17. Habakkuk even puzzles over this. And he's a prophet. He puzzles over it. Adonai, haven't you existed forever? My God, my Holy One, we will not die. Adonai, you appointed them to execute judgment. Rock, you commissioned them to correct us. Your eyes are too pure to see evil. You cannot countenance oppression. So why do you countenance traitors? Why are you so silent when evil people swallow up those more righteous than they? At the time, the people were not acting very righteous. You make people like fish in the sea, like reptiles who have no ruler. The evil haul them up with their hooks, catch them in their fishing net, or gather them in their drag net. Then they rejoice and make merry. This is what they do. They rejoice and they make merry, and they humiliate the captives. That is exactly what they do. And burning incense to their drag net, because through them they live in luxury and with plenty of food to eat. Should they therefore keep emptying their nets? Should they keep slaughtering the nations without pity? So he's questioning. He's really puzzling over this, and he's like, Lord, but you said. But if he'd just gone back to Deuteronomy 28, he also said that if they do not keep their side of the covenant, they are going to have consequences, have very, very serious consequences. So it's not that God could not keep them in the promised land, but that the Israelites had failed to keep the covenant, their side of the covenant. There was a covenant, an agreement, a promise between them and God. I will be your God, you will be my people, and I will dwell among you. That is the covenant. But in order for me to keep my side of the covenant, you need to not turn to idolatry. You need to not be unjust. You need to behave like my people if you are my people. So I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what it was. So God used this traumatic, painful time to break their prideful resistance and to get them to acknowledge the spiritual damage caused by their sin. There was spiritual damage. Sin separates us from God, and that's what had happened. They'd been separated from God, but and they had stopped caring. And one of the things that God had against them was that they were using the religious practices, the sacrifices of the day, to make themselves feel better about their sin. It's like, here we go, I'm slaughtering a goat, I'm slaughtering a sheep, I'm slaughtering a cow, whatever, I'm doing a grain offering, so that can cover my sin that I did yesterday. When I raped a woman and cheated on my wife, that's fine, okay. But now that I've covered the sin with the sacrifice, I'm going to go sin again. It's actually kind of like that hyper grace, right? We go to church and we feel better about ourselves, then we go sin again. I'm going to go sin again for a week now. But don't worry, it's fine, because I can come back and I can do more sacrifices. And I'm good then. I'm in the club, I'm good. That doesn't work like that. It's disrespectful. It's actually disrespectful to the Lord to have that kind of attitude. And then Ezekiel, who was an exile, called them to repentance. So you've got Ezekiel 1 verse 1. Haggai, Malachi, Psalm. Where is Ezekiel? Micah, Jonah, Obadiah, Amos, Hosea, Ezekiel. Yay. Okay. Ezekiel 1. Ezekiel 1 verse 1. In the 30th year of the 5th day of the 4th month, while I was among the exiles by the Kavor River, the heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. Okay. And then 3 verse 11. Then go to the exiles, to your countrymen, and ask them, speak to them, tell them, here is what Adonai Elohim says, whether they listen or not. I think I jumped. No, I didn't. And then 11 verse 13. As I was prophesying, Platyahu, the son of Benaiah, died. I fell down on my face and cried out, "Oh, Adonai Elohim, are you going to destroy completely those of Israel who are left?" And then 39 verse 23. 39, 36, 39 verse 23. While the nations will know that the house of Israel went into exile because of their guilt, because they broke faith with me, so that I hid my face from them and handed them over to their adversaries, and they fell by the sword, all of them. So, God's voice came from Ezekiel, letting them know of their sin and the need for repentance. And then God's voice came from outside of Babylon with words of encouragement and direction, because he never gives up on us. Even if we give up on him constantly and we have issues of faith and we have questions and all that, he never has any questions. He never has any issues of faith. He knows who we are. He sees who he made us to be. We don't always see what he made us to be. We don't always see what he's put inside of us, but that's why he pulls it out all the time. But when we break faith with him and start going into idolatry and all that stuff, then we have broken that covenant. And nowadays, Jesus he is the ultimate sacrifice. So we might still break our promise sometimes to the Lord, but we can always, because we've got the Holy Spirit in us, he helps us to recognize our sin and to go before the Lord for repentance. So, so the Lord always encourages and he always gives direction. Whether we listen or not, that's another story. Jeremiah wrote to them on how to maximize their time in exile. So there's Jeremiah 29, verse 1 to 14. Oops, almost tore that page. Hold on. Jeremiah 29. I think it's this way. Yeah, it is. Jeremiah 29, verse 1 to 14. Okay. So following the text of the letter Jeremiah, the prophet sent to Jerusalem, to the leaders remaining in exile, as well as to the Kohanim, the priests, and the prophets, and all the people Nebuchadnezzar had carried off captive to Jerusalem, from Jerusalem to Babylon. This was after Jeconiah, the king, the queen mother, the officers, the leaders of Judah and Jerusalem, and the artisans and skilled workers had left Jerusalem. The letter was entrusted to Elisha. I think that must be Elisha, the son of Shaphan, and Gemariah, the son of Hilkiah. Zedekiah, king of Judah, sent them to Babylon, to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. The letter said, "Here is what Adonai Tsevaot, the God of Israel, says to those in exile, whom I have caused to be carried off captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build yourselves houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Choose women to marry and have sons and daughters. Multiply and populate the earth." They needed to, because a lot of them had died already at the hands of the Babylonians and the Assyrians. So God says, choose women to marry and have sons and daughters. Choose wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage to men, so that they can have sons and daughters. Increase your numbers there. Don't decrease. Seek the welfare of the city to which I have caused you to go in exile, and pray to Adonai on its behalf, for your welfare is bound up in its welfare. For this is what Adonai Tsevaot, the God of Israel, says: Don't let your prophets who are living among you and your diviners deceive you, and don't pay attention to the dreams you urge them to dream. For they are prophesying falsely in my name. I have not sent them, says Adonai. So that's interesting, eh? Don't let your prophets who are living among you and your diviners deceive you, and don't pay attention to the dreams you urge them to dream. For they are prophesying falsely in my name. I have not sent them, says Adonai. There were false prophets during that time too. And they probably popped up everywhere because the people needed them. For here is what Adonai says: after Babylon's 70 years are over, I will remember you and fulfill my good promise to you by bringing you back to this place. For I know what plans I have in mind for you, says Adonai. Plans for well-being, not for bad things, so that you can have hope and a future. When you call to me and pray to me, I will listen to you. When you seek me, you will find me, provided you seek me for me wholeheartedly, and I will let you find me, says Adonai. Then I will reverse your exile. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have driven you, says Adonai, and bring you back to the place from which I exiled you. So that was Jeremiah giving a letter to the people about how to live in the exiled land. And so over time, a new kind of people began to take shape. The people who returned would be repentant and eager to put things right. And so that is all we've got for today. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and share. See you later. Bye.